I'm Matt Helmus, current General Manager of Windmill Island Gardens, and I am excited to have the opportunity to sit down today with Jaap de Blecourt, who is the original manager of Windmill Island Gardens. So we're going to talk a little bit about his experience here and where the island's been over the years. So Jaap, could you tell us just a little bit about your life in the Netherlands, where you grew up, and how you got to the US of A?
I grew up in a little town, went to grade school. From grade school, I attended to the elementary horticultural school in Paterswolde, a little bit past the city of Groningen. But then it was Second World War and the Germans took possession of the school. Then the next thing, go to a high school then. I went to the high school for about 2 months and then the Germans took that school too. So it was a complete loss here. So after the Second World War, when the Germans finally moved out of the Netherlands, the schools became free, I went to my horticultural elementary school. That was for 4 years. First year was 2 days a week. The last 3 years was 3 days a week. So then, besides that, I went to evening high school and I worked in the nursery nearby. With all of that, when I graduated, I did do an entrance exam in the horticultural school in Aalsmeer, which was near Amsterdam. After I graduated from that, I extended to go to another horticultural college, which was arboriculture. Graduated a year later from that. So I worked for a year in England. They came back. Then I went for a year to Versailles, outside of Paris. Worked in a nursery. I worked for a year, very satisfactory, but not as well developed as all the nurseries I had known in the Netherlands. And in my room was a fellow from Switzerland. And he says, I'm traveling through Switzerland and when I'm done with my traveling, I will settle in my father's business. So he gave me an address from Switzerland, and within 2 weeks I heard from them. So I worked for a big landscaping firm who did work all through Switzerland. And at the same time, former neighbors next door to my folks had emigrated to Chicago. And I was good friends with their 2 sons. And I was in correspondence with them. So one day they came to visit my folks. And they said, would you like to come to America? I said, yeah, but I need a sponsor. Well, we are willing to be your sponsor. So it took me about 2 years. That's the reason that I stayed that long in Switzerland. So the time was up. My papers were all ready to emigrate within about 2 weeks. And I heard from the immigration office that Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island was looking to being in charge of the gardens and the grounds for Grand Hotel. Well, I right away called my people back in Chicago. Right away I called back and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to stay with you. They already had remodeled the house, had a bedroom up to the house. But he says, well, we are happy that you found a job. So I worked very satisfactorily in charge of the gardens and the grounds for Grand Hotel. Also for the homes with the gardens around it where the helpers were located. I got to know one girl who was in her last year of college to become a school teacher. So the next year she graduated and she came then to Mackinac Island in Grand Hotel. When we wanted to get married, would do everything what he could. And he gave us a wonderful wedding. So, after 2 years with our first daughter in the winter, everything was fine, everything was good. Then spring came. Well, all the traffic on Mackinac Island is by horses. They want to keep it that way. So when my wife went for groceries and took the little girl along, her eyes did all swell up. She hardly could talk anymore. Well, she rushed her to the clinic and they gave her a shot, And well, Months later, we had the same thing again. And we kept her as much aside as possible. And he says, the doctor says, you have no other choice. For your daughter's sake, you will have to move.
Well, you have to explain why, though. What was wrong with your daughter? What did she have?
Allergic to horses. And all the traffic on Mackinac Island goes by horses. So he advised us to move. And my wife had become a school teacher on Mackinac Island. So it was kind of a double loss. That winter we went to the Netherlands. Our son was born in the Netherlands. When we came back, my wife says, what are you going to do? Well, I said, I have to let Grand Hotel know. So I sent a letter out to Michigan, to get to the park department, to Grand Rapids, to all of where the Dutch people were settled in Michigan. First one, within 2 weeks, I heard from Holland, Michigan. And why don't you come over? Because we are looking for someone. We are going to build a windmill. We are looking for someone to develop the gardens and all that. So I came. On Monday, they showed me supposedly where Windmill Island was going to be. They drove me to the end of 6th Street, and I looked over at the swamp, and I said, well, where is it? And he said, well, yeah, down over there. He says, we had bought land just down here at the end of 6th Street from 2 ladies who had inherited the land from their parents, and it was all nice and dry. They had a man come over who was in charge of the windmills in the Netherlands. And he came over because the city council asked him, and so he drove, and he said, well, there is where we are planning to build a windmill. He says, you can't do that. That's too close to the cities. The city takes all the wind away, and you have to be in the open. Oh, well. We walked past that lake down there on the bottom of the hill, you know, a narrow little walkway until we got to the grove here nearby, you know. And I says, well, he says, this would be the good place. This site is far enough away from not taking the wind away. Had to manage again to buy that from the man who lived near the edge.
But a little important to have wind for a windmill.
Yeah, right, right. To make it short, I got hired in to develop the gardens. So I came in October of 1964.
Can you talk a little bit about that difference? So you came to America to manage the grounds of the Grand Hotel, one of the most famous hotels in the country, and did that. And then a few years later, you find yourself having to move to a swamp.
Yeah. And also wage-wise, because after the first year, Mr. Woodfield, the owner of Grand Hotel, sent me a nice letter and says, don't worry about a thing, you have a job with Grand Hotel for your lifetime. Well, that sounded all very good. I started to work at $5,500 a year. The man in charge, who had been in charge of the parks in the city, was making less. When he heard that I was getting $5,500, he was upset about it, so he had one got a raise then too.
When you brought your family to town and you showed your wife Windmill Island, was she impressed?
She says, for this you left Mackinac Island? I said, well, what other choice did I have? Finally, when it opened, Prince Bernhard came in May 1964. And he was the one who he opened the windmill. It was a big celebration.
Was the island all set and ready by then? Was it all perfect?
Not yet, yet.
That's what's amazing, though, when we talk, is the challenges you went through and the things you built here, and here we are 60 years later.
Yeah.
And the post house is still here, the windmill. Yeah. The bridge needs a little work, but many of the buildings after 60 years are still the highlights of the island.
And they all started out for $450,000. Yeah.
I tell people it's the best investment the city ever made.
Yeah, yeah.
We've had, I don't know if you know, we just added up this season, we've had over 5.5 million people visit Windmill Island Gardens over the years. Just a lot of them. So maybe tell, when we opened, the windmill was opened by Prince Bernhard, and shortly thereafter was tulip time. Maybe speak a little bit about that first tulip time and what that was like.
In the first tulip time, we had all extra people helping us. People in the Windmill Committee, and the mayor in town, Nelson Bosman. Then we had the people lined up almost from the Brits to get into the windmill. Well, it was all new to us, you know, and what the police department did very much, helping the people after the tulip time parade was over to direct them to Windmill Island. Well, after a few years, they got tired of that. They directed them right away out of town. Well, then people, of course, said, who wants to go back, you know? Well, then they went to other things like Dutch Village and yeah, the wooden shoe factory and yeah.
When the island started, you had to pay back the bonds.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about the financials of the island. And like you said, the people never voted on it. How did they feel about this place that we didn't get 500,000 people a year like we were promised?
Well, when the people found out, I got many letters. Just want to let you know that I'm opposed to it, that the place will be open on Sunday. Because after the windmill was ready to be used, the city council members had never thought about it, that it would be open on Sunday. Well, some of the council members were not in favor of it. But Mary Pierbold, who was a member, came. Well, now listen, we have Windmill Island now, we have no other choice, and it's ridiculous to think that it cannot be open on Sunday. And not that I'm that so much for of it, that it is open on Sunday, but there's no other way. And so it opened on Sunday, but I did get some letters to my house in Holland Heights.
Well, it seems like you were always a master of make do. We never had quite enough to make it happen, but somehow you made it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know you mentioned Prince Bernhard came to open the mill,
Yeah.
and you told me there was a little incident that day. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, he came to the windmill, and he climbed the stairways, and he went walk on the gallery, and there are the ropes, you know, where you can make starting the windmill turn, but it wasn't fastened too well. Not knowing, I didn't know, but there I was in one of the things which held the ropes, you know, came down onto the people who were trying to pull it to make the windmill start turning, and did not get hurt, but it was quite a shock to me because that could have been much worse.
If you would have hit the governor or the prince from the Netherlands, you might have been in trouble.
Yeah.
I know one of the big movers behind getting a windmill was Willard Wickers. Was he involved with Windmill Island? How did you work with Bill Wickers in those earlier years?
Bill Wickers, of course, was a member of the Windmill Committee, and he was also in charge of the museum.
Did Bill Wickers bring you new ideas? I know I've heard the post box was from Bill Wickers that he found.
He had found it in one of the cities, and that thing is so heavy, you know. So Bill Wickers, somehow talked him into it to bring it, but where was he going to put it? So finally, he found a place for it at Windmill Island, and I don't know if it's being used now or not.
Yeah, and people, especially Dutch visitors, still recognize it. It's kind of like the blue police boxes for British people.
Yeah.
Dutch people recognize the red mailbox.
Yeah. And does it say brievenbus?
Brievenbus, yeah. And
Yeah,
we
on the
still
outside.
collect the mail, and we'll still bring it to the post office for you. It's still working.
Yeah.
And there's not many of them in the Netherlands today, I'm told.
No, the all are all scrapped, yeah.
Was that hard a little bit now that there's not many people around anymore who are from the Netherlands, not many immigrants. So you have many people of my generation who have grandparents or great-grandparents from the Netherlands. Did Windmill Island start to change when you were there, of how they told the Dutch story or how they connected with people?
An awful lot of Dutch people came, especially when visitors from the Netherlands came to see the family in the US, you know. Many from Canada too. Yeah, loads of buses from Canada.
People who came after the war,
Yeah.
the immigrants after the war, yeah. But it's exciting when we have lunch just to talk to you that we started at Windmill Island at about the same age with a young family, both of us.
Yeah.
And even where you're from in the Netherlands, that's where way back my family was from, only a few kilometers
Yeah,
away. So
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
to me, it's just exciting to have you here to share your stories that after 60 years, Windmill Island continues to stay above water and
Yeah,
continues to
yeah,
grow.
Yeah.
But you built a lasting legacy. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, almost 95. So now we'll be 95 in November. So.
So you started in 1964. How old were you when you started in 64?
Well, I was born in 1930.
So 34 or so years old?
Yeah.
We're about the same age, yeah.
Yeah.
So you worked here for 35 years, and we know you visit on occasion in the summer. You check up on us.
Yeah.
Does it still feel the same? Does it feel a little bit different? How does it feel when you come back?
It feels different. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it feels much improved. Yeah, many things have changed, but all for the good. Yeah. Yeah.
There's always something to do here.
Oh.
Always something to make better, improve. Yeah. Well, I think you said that when you wrote up your plans for the island. You said that the island will continue to grow, but it'll never be done.
No. No.
It'll always be changing. To wrap it up, I just want to say thank you, Jaap. It's always fun to spend time with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having you start off the island for many years, as someone who's managing the island now, I appreciate the foundation you built, and it's always fun to hear your stories, and always fun to have you check up on us and see how we're doing now.
But I want to mention too that you're doing a very good job. So it has improved in so many ways. You know, every improvement I made. You know.
Just try and make it better every day. A little bit better, a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, wonderful.